Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Central Coast Local Planning Panel. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we meet today, especially the Dark and Jung speaking people of the Central Coast Council area and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I extend my respects to elders past and present and to all future cultural knowledge holders. This meeting is being recorded and webcast, and you are encouraged to bear this in mind in choosing what you say. There's to be no other recording or filming. No apologies. There's to be no other recording or filming of this meeting unless the prior permission of the panel has been obtained. The panel's decisions from the meeting and the audio recording should be available on Council's website ordinarily well within 7 days from this meeting. Could I please ask everyone to turn off your electronic devices to silent and ensure that you are free from any interruptions. So just to introduce the panel members for the meeting today are myself as the chair, Krason. We have Stephen Leathley, who's an expert professional panel member, Flynn, who's an expert professional panel member, and also Glen, who's the nominated community panel member. There are no apologies for today's meeting. So the meeting today will consider only one development application. It's agenda item 2.1, and it relates to the supplementary report on DA 221 2014B. And that address is the proposal is for a 43 lot subdivision to create 40 residential lots, 1 public reserve, 1 detention basin and 1 residue lot at 31 Aldenham Road, Warner Vale. So the panel has been provided with assessment report prepared by council staff, as well as all the public submissions on the applications. And council staff have also briefed the panel on the key issues that the applications raise, and panel members have familiarised themselves with the site. Today we have the following people registered to address the panel on agenda item 2.1. Steve Marsh, David Harris, who's the MP member for Wyong, and Paul McDonald. Don't think, just Rachel, just clarify, are there any representatives of the applicant registered to speak today? I don't have them on the list.
No registrations from the applicant for today.
Okay, thank you. So I'd just like to welcome everyone. The way that the panel process will work is that we'll hear from the speakers. Well, there's only one agenda item. If the applicant's representative were available, then they would speak second, and so on. Our usual practice is to allow individual members of the public 3 minutes to speak on the matter, and that time can be extended with the agreement of the panel, but we've only got the one item today, so I'm happy if people need a little bit more than 3 minutes to allow whatever time you need to address the panel. We don't have an applicant to speak. And as the panel has been provided with copies of all the submissions, I'll just remind you, there's no need to repeat every point that's been made in those submissions. We've got everything before us. I'd also like to ask that every speaker be heard in silence while they're addressing the panel, and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout this meeting. There is to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or council staff, and any such criticism will be contrary to the panel's code of conduct and will not be accepted. Such criticism also adds nothing to the process of considering the matters at hand. Panel members may ask questions of each speaker to clarify our understanding of what is being said. And after hearing from speakers, the panel may ask questions of council officers to clarify matters that are raised. After hearing from all the speakers on each agenda item, the panel will adjourn the meeting to confer. If we were meeting in person, we might then reconvene the meeting to hand down our decisions, but given this is an electronic meeting, we will instead seek to have the panel's decisions up on council's website as soon as possible. At the conclusion of the adjournment, we may decide to either make a decision on the matter, or if more information is required by the panel, the decision may be deferred either for a further public meeting or to be dealt with electronically. So I'll move firstly to agenda item 1, which is declarations of interest. And I'd like to remind panel members of the requirements in the Code of Conduct for panel members about conflict of interest declarations. Nothing has been submitted in writing that anybody's got a conflict of interest, but I'll just ask verbally for confirmation. Does any member of the panel have a declaration of interest which has not previously been made?
I have no interest to declare, Cara.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no declaration of interest, Cara.
Neither do I, Cara.
Thank you, everyone. So we can now move on to the public meeting component of the agenda. So we'll move on to the speakers registered to address the panel. And I'd like to just thank everybody for, I'm sorry, I've just, my screen has disappeared again. We all have technical difficulties from time to time. I'd just like to thank everybody for being here today to be able to address the panel. I do just want to note that we're obviously made aware of some requests that were made from members of the public to address the panel at an on-site meeting, and I believe the Secretariat has provided people that made those requests with a copy of our operational procedures and the state legislation or local directions order in relation to that, which doesn't facilitate that process. But this is a public meeting. We might be conducting it virtually, but we are obviously really keen to hear everybody's views, and we're pleased that you have joined us today. So we'll start with the first speaker, Steve Marsh. Steve, when you're ready, just let us know.
Can you hear me, Cara?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good morning, panel. My name's Steve Marsh. I've lived through Aldenham Road for 33 years. In that time, in 1988, the then council tried to make Aldenham Road the main road through to Wyong. And after discussions, it was proven that the road was actually made to rural 1C specifications. So it didn't meet any of the criteria to be made into a highway. So as a result, it didn't go ahead. In approximately 2006, Lakes Grammar Secondary School was built, and they accessed that building site through Aldenham Road. So all the heavy machinery and vehicles and everything else went up this road. They carved it up, to put it politely. And after that was finished, the council actually topped, tarred, and topped it with gravel. Now, that's the only maintenance that's been done on this road since 1988. So the in 2009 and 2010, the link road was built through to access that school, the Central Coast Grammar School. And there was, in 2015, we the residents received an application for this subdivision, which was for 40 houses. There's a misapprehension here that we, the residents, expected them to actually develop Aldenham Road with curb and guttering and all the rest of it. The residents didn't want any of that at all, right? We are quite happy with our subdivision the way it is. We'd like that subdivision to go ahead, but what the residents said at that meeting was, and to the council was, that we would like that the traffic from that subdivision to be diverted down through the link road, which is now called Albert Warner Drive. Now, since 2015, of course, you've got this time period of 2022. Now, in that time, we've had an application, well, actually they're going ahead now to build 40 houses across we still call it Warnervale Road, but you guys call it Albert Warner Drive, all right? Because with us as long-term residents, Warnervale Road went all the way through to Albert Warner Drive at the traffic lights down there near the school. So sorry for to be confused there, but anyway, we've had 2 lots of subdivisions go in there, one for 30 houses and one for 70 houses. So there's 2 more trigger points trying to get onto what we call Warnervale Road. To save confusion, I'll call it Albert Warner from now on in, okay? Everybody with me so far? Okay, so with those houses, there's also another development in the area of Aldenham Road that's having 14 townhouses put halfway up, and beside it, the next block is also scheduled to have another 14 townhouses. So what the residents' real problem is that we have a situation where we're going to have a huge influx of vehicles. If you take on average 2 vehicles per house, when you work out the 40 houses up the road, the 28 townhouses, the 40 houses across, and the 70 houses, and then we've got a place called Rosella Ridge that Paul McDonald will talk about later on, which is another huge subdivision just across the railway line. So in the end, we've also got the new Porters Creek School that's happening. So we're going to have a hell of a lot more cars for that. Now, to conclude, what I'd like to say is that I would really like this panel to investigate further. There's never been a traffic survey done for Aldenham Road or any of these small roads with this new traffic situation that's going ahead. I believe, in conclusion, that the changes to the DA that we're asking for is an ideal time for the council to review the traffic conditions between 2015 and 2022, as previously stated, and it would have a lot more impact for the people up in that development to be able to access the link road via an already built roundabout up there. So I'd like to thank the committee, the panel, for listening to us today. Unfortunately, I'm not a public speaker, so I apologise for my display, but I think that now is the only time we've got to address this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. No, you did really well. And I understand that you were also raising some points by a neighbour, Gary Hilliar. Did you get the same point? Did he have the same points, or did you get his points across as well?
I have. Gary Gary's got a few medical problems and he's been unable to attend this morning. He's had a bad night last night. So
I'm sorry to hear that. So.
Yeah, but we have another resident here by the name of Alan Caldwell. He's not registered to speak, but he's here listening to the conversation now.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you,
Cara, for your time.
No problem. And then the next speaker that's registered is David Harris. David, when you're ready.
Thanks, Cara. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to address the panel today. I do so on behalf of residents, but I will declare that Jack Warner Drive is a road that I use frequently as I live at Hamlin Terrace. So further to the east, but it's one of the ways that I access Sparks Road quite regularly. So I'm well aware of the area. I want to just build on what Steve has said in terms of traffic. The community there aren't opposed to the development per se, but they are opposed to the current road plan. So when the link road was built, there was a roundabout constructed, which actually has a link, and you can see it from the aerial maps on Google Maps and other maps, had a link for Aldenham Road to continue through onto that roundabout. Now, when I had a look at the plan that the applicants put forward, the area where it would connect from Aldenham Road through to the roundabout has no residential blocks. So it's actually left clear. So the residents are wondering why the road plan as it exists sends traffic down Aldenham Road and also Railway Road. It sends it to a stretch of Jack Warner Drive, which is approximately 500 metres long from the railway gates to the traffic lights. Now, along that section, as Steve said, there has been approval for several new developments since this development was first approved. So what's essentially happening is that a whole lot of traffic is being directed onto that 500 metre stretch, which in the AM and PM peaks includes all of the traffic heading towards Lakes Anglican Grammar School. So that creates huge congestion, which is accentuated by the fact that people are blocked by the lights for periods of time. And they're also blocked by the closing of the rail gates, which occurs on a regular basis. So what the residents are simply saying is, could the road plan be adjusted so that the traffic can be directed onto the link road through the existing roundabout onto a road that will eventually go all the way through to Wyong, which would be of benefit to not just the current residents in terms of limiting traffic past their residential street, but also benefit the new residents, giving them access to the main road that takes them both to Sparks Road and to eventually through to Wyong. The only traffic plan I could find for the area was the development that's occurring at 9 Albert Warner Drive. That's a 32-lot development, and it predicted from 32 lots there would be 237 vehicle trips per day. And that went on to say that in 2016, along that stretch of Albert Warner Drive, there was 300 vehicle trips at peak in the morning. And by 2026, that would rise to 430 vehicular trips in the AM period. Now, that doesn't take into account these other, because that study was done in 2017, it doesn't take into account the Rosella estate that was mentioned. It doesn't take into account the Aramba estate, which will be display homes to start off with, but will then revert to residential area. So all we're saying is that common sense prevails, and that 500 metre stretch of road, which is bordered by lights and railway gate, doesn't continually take the pressures of all of these new developments. We have a chance to direct the traffic onto the roundabout and improve the area for everyone using that area. So I know that's probably not a problem for the applicant themselves, because they would have been directed by council in the past. And we know now that the council's different from when this first went through in 2014-15. But I've spoken to council about this. There isn't a traffic plan, and the current pathway is a pathway to chaos. So I just want to put that very strongly on behalf of the residents of the area there.
Thank you, David, for that. And then the final speaker that we have registered is Paul McDonald. I can't see Paul connected. Is Rachel, do you know, is he joining by phone or?
Paul and Steve were at the same location, so we're just proposing to change Steve's name to Paul, and then Paul will be able to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Okay, Paul, we can see your name's changed. So when you're ready to address the panel, just, yes, that's it.
Okay, you got me now?
We have you now.
Okay, good morning, guys. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Firstly, we understand that, like, our road is a rural road. It does need upgrading, we know that. But with all the traffic that's coming through, like David said and like Steve said, we do need access for pedestrians, all that type of thing. With all the extra traffic that's coming down the road, we have to worry about people's safety as well. So since 2014, when the development was passed by the council, This housing area has changed completely, as you can understand, because we have things like Rosella Rise, AV Jennings, which is 526 lots. They're in second stage at the moment. We've got Uramba. They've got 70 lots, Ivory 30, where these weren't in place back then when the road was passed. So we've got 24 townhouses up the street in 10 and 12 Aldenham Road. We've got Porters Creek School, as we already spoke about, and we've got untold amount of traffic. I see the need for traffic control, and the best way that we can do that is to go to a controlled area, which would be at the top of our street, to allow people to go through in the roundabout up the top and go down Aldenham Road, down the Link Road, which is Albert Warner Drive, because there's traffic lights down there, and that can control all the traffic. Because if all the traffic comes up to the end of our road, we're going to have a gridlock. Eventually, we will have a gridlock by the time all these places are built. So at the moment, our road, and we can see it on Google, there's cracks appearing all along the sides of the road and that now. So if we have all these heavy vehicles, heavy traffic, trucks coming up, taking up all the road space, especially on weekends, it's going to be hard, because if we have our residents all parking on either side of the road, you've only got access to one car. So that's going to make a problem, because there's a lot of people that will be using this road to go up and down, to go to schools, to go to, just to go and do their shopping, all that type of thing. So an upgrade is needed, and I think the upgrade would be a perfect way to go down the Link Road. We've got all the school traffic of a morning. It takes time to get out of the end of our block now, the end of our street. It took me one day 32 cars to get out, and that's without all these new subdivisions going through. So I think that if this new development goes through, and we could have a look at that area up there and try and get a way that we can get down into the new Link Road, which is a beautiful road to drive on, I think the situation would stand up and speaks for itself. And that's the main issue that we've got. We're not worried about development going in anywhere. We're just worried about the traffic and the safety of the people. So that's about all I've got to say, and I thank you very much for hearing me.
No, thanks a lot, Paul, for presenting that. So that concludes the registered speakers. Just before obviously there's some matters that are raised there that were also raised in the written submissions that we will seek some clarification from council officers from. But before we do that, do any of the panel members have any specific questions of any of the three speakers we've just heard from?
They know it's not Kevin Garrett. That's true.
No?
No, that's not.
No, I don't have any, Cara.
Okay.
Nor do I.
So no questions of the speakers. Oh.
Okay, great. So I think what I'd like to ask is some questions of the council officers. I guess just to start with, it's probably just good to remind everyone that this is not the first DA for the subdivision. It's a modification application. So the planning legislation just does permit the panel, only permits the panel to consider the application that's before us in relation to the matters that are proposed to be modified. So it doesn't enable it to go back to right to the beginning of looking at the development as a whole. So there's a restriction there in terms of looking at the changes and the assessment being based on that. But I'm just noting that for context of what we are and are not able to look at. I think it would be good for both the planning officer and Nathan Burns, Stephen McDonald, just to be able to provide a bit of a status update and some context and clarity around, I guess, the strategic planning for the area from a road and development perspective. And probably in particular, Nathan, also just clarifying the original approval upon which the modification is based, and just identifying whether there was ever any intention or opportunity to connect to that roundabout. We can all see, obviously, that small exit point that's created there. and just understanding the broader strategic context in the area. So I don't know who wants to speak first, whether Nathan or Stephen, but Stephen, you're on mute.
I can probably give you some background in terms of the traffic modelling that was done for the area.
Mm-hmm.
So the Warnervale South DCP that Nathan showed you before was informed by a traffic study for what we call Precinct 7A, and that map that Nathan showed you in the DCP is basically Precinct 7A. So the traffic study was done and it included the Warnervale Town Centre, residential development to the south of Warnervale Road, the Wong Employment Zone. So all of the proposed developments in that area are included in the Precinct 7A traffic study, which was used to come up with the Section 94 contributions plan and the planning for road intersections, including Sparks Road. So that's basically how we got to where we are in terms of the strategic planning for traffic.
Okay, and in terms of any potential for the link road to connect through, where is all of that up to? Both linking through from Sparks Road to the highway and also potentially to Aldenham Road.
Yeah, so Transport for New South Wales are currently in the planning process for the link road. They do have strategic designs, and I'm not sure where they're at in terms of detailed design at this stage, but they do have strategic designs for the link road and the intersection with Civic Highway at Watanabe. So basically what will happen once the road's constructed, it will become a classified road, or a state road, which will be under the care and control of Transport for New South Wales. So in terms of traffic on the link roads, it's anticipated that it could carry between 20 and 30,000 vehicles a day over the next few years. So from a safety perspective, linking this subdivision to a road that's going to carry that much traffic would be a safety concern. It would be far more desirable for the traffic from this subdivision to access Warnervale Road and the existing traffic signals on Albert Warner Drive.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, you might like to share the DCP plan that Stephen just referred to, so that members of the public can also see what that is. That was just a plan that was shared with us during the pre-meeting briefing on this.
Yeah, I can't share where the agenda's being shared.
You should be able to now, Nathan. Can you please try again?
Yep. So if that's working.
It's not working yet. Just try again. So you are sharing, this is not the structure plan, it could be.
No, so just get to that. Just to answer the earlier question quickly, okay. In terms of was there a connection envisaged, this is the stamped approved plan, the original one, and there was no, just to confirm, there was no connection to the what's noted there as Albert Warner at the link road. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the structure plan and DCP, hopefully that's clear. So more broadly, there's the residential development north of the railway station, which has been mentioned, the new school and development around Warnervale Road, so further east and in proximity to the existing station. Our subject site is in the corner. I'll try and get that. Sorry, just trying to get it more centered to the screen. So that's in terms of the study area for the traffic that Steve had mentioned. That's essentially the red dashed area. Again, I'll just attempt to it's in here. So the subject site is that sort of pink residential area identified there. Again, in terms of the structure plan, it included the local road link between Aldenham and Railway. And just for the members of the public, I suppose, what the earlier comment was that the structure plan shows that the road constructed along the boundary of the existing lots, whereas the approved plan actually has it more central to that lot. But generally in accordance with that plan. In terms of future connections, there's the future connection shown, which may involve Railway Road connecting through to this, what I refer to as the country music site or the university site. It's the area south of the existing school, which is identified as future employment land.
Look, I'll just jump in, Nathan. That link from Railway Road to the country music site, probably unlikely to go ahead now that Transport for New South Wales have taken over the Link Road project and it will become a classified road. So I'd say that link is unlikely.
Yep. So again, in terms of the broader traffic strategy, it includes at some point in time a closure of the level crossing, which would involve also at the same time some sort of pedestrian link over the railway. Does that sort of fairly brief, but is there anything further you'd like me to elaborate on there?
So that's the DCP 2013. I think I saw in the footer. So that's the most current. That's the applicable DCP for this area at the moment.
Yes. Yep.
Where's councils? I mean, obviously, as you indicated, there are, and as we heard today, there are a few other developments that are occurring and some changes that have been made. Is council already, or does it have scheduled in process any update to its strategic planning or its DCP for the area to address some of those existing and proposed future changes?
In terms of road upgrades or the like?
I think, broadly in terms of strategic land use planning, but in particular, we just obviously heard from Stephen McDonald then that extension of railway to meet the link road is possibly unlikely to go forward. So, an update in terms of how that relates in terms of any of the other recent development. It doesn't really show the schools on this plan either. So the grammar schools. So I just wondered, it was 2013, it's coming up to 10 years. Are you aware of any updates in strategic planning at council? Is that a project that's perhaps has commenced or is on the agenda for the next year or so that would look not only at land use planning and bringing this plan up to date, but also looking at the local traffic network?
I'm not aware of anything in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as far as I'm aware, I would have to check with strategy, but I think that there's more work going in terms of identifying the next phase of release areas as opposed to revising the controls in these areas. I mean, to date, it has progressed generally in accordance with what you see here.
Mm.
There's like, in that, and as to be expected, there is some tip and change in terms of, for example, the road configurations here haven't sort of gone on that diagonal. They've tended to be straight, but in general, much the same as our subject proposal where the road's showed hard on the boundary. The general essence is there, although it's not precisely the same. But in terms of a comprehensive review, I'd have to seek advice from strategies on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So in terms of the matters that were raised by the speakers and any other questions or matters raised in the assessment report, can I just open it up to the other panel members to ask any specific questions of council staff?
Cara, I'd like to ask Steve McDonald, the traffic modelling you did for the precinct 17, I presume the few assumptions as a result of the results of the modelling was to come up with a solution, to come up with a structure plan, identified two ways, long-term, two ways in and out of that precinct. Now, it's got nothing to do with this development at the moment, but what I'm saying is that precinct was set up with a northern one and a southern access. Traffic coming from Wyong up the link road would be able to turn into a highway and go up and come in. The traffic would be split. Aldenham Road would go south, they'd go down, not go through the north. So we'd have a mix, and I presume that was the basis for the structure plan. Is that right?
Yeah. When the link road was a council project, it was going to be a local road. It wasn't going to be a classified road. So that's why that railway road link into the industrial roundabout was in the DCP. And it was a few years after that Transport New South Wales, or I think it was RMS back then, decided that the link road project would be a good project for them to release some of the traffic from the Pacific Highway of North Wyong. Basically, any traffic heading north to the M1 would be able to use the link road, Sparks Road, and access the M1. Whereas at the moment they're using the Pacific Highway all the way up to the roundabout Wyong Road and then turning left onto Sparks Road, which was added probably 6 or 7 kilometres to the trip.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I'm doing this for the sake of the people that have spoken today. I mean, they're concerned about the future, the cumulative impact of all this development. The cumulative impact of all that development based on the structure plan at the moment is that traffic ultimately be split between the primary school access on that link road and the Southern Railway. This application, as originally approved and as a modification, has no impact on that. It doesn't have any impact on the existing structure plan. So Railway Parade, this has a temporary road turnaround at the end. Council, that would be built through to a roundabout. With the industrial one, you've obviously, it makes sense to have 4-way feeders to a roundabout. It doesn't work really in some ways with an unbalanced view. But that's for a future thing for for Transport for New South Wales to do on public exhibition. All the people here would get an opportunity to comment on that, including council. And ultimately, the new North Wyong structure plan would be reflecting maybe a change, but that wouldn't be done without all the community having a say on the strategic planning. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. But at the moment,
it's up to
the current development application and the amendment comply with the existing structure plan.
That's right.
Okay. No, I've got no further questions.
Thanks. Stephen, Glen, did you have your hand up?
No, sorry. No.
Okay. Okay. Stephen Leathley, do you have any questions?
No, I think Greg very well put it. So the situation.
Okay, I just have one further question to ask, which is raised in some of the written submissions, and it's probably for Mark Dow. The matter that was raised in some submissions relates to concerns to do with the drainage easement being located close to the boundary of adjoining properties, so running along the boundary, next to the boundary of adjoining properties, with concerns about not only drainage flow, but also impact on the potential root zone of trees that run along their boundaries. I'm not sure if you have assessed this component, or perhaps Nathan, if you would have assessed the application and considered those submissions. I'm not sure if you've made Mark aware of that, but perhaps if one of you could answer.
Yep. So currently along the back of those boundaries is a sewer rising main from the pump station down in Railway Road. And that would be contained in, I can't remember exactly how wide of an easement. It'll be 1.5 to 2 metres wide.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside that easement will be the inner allotment drainage easement. And that will have another 1.5 metre wide easement.
It's 3.5 metres wide, the sewer easement.
3.5.
Yeah, that's
the sewer. And then
yeah.
the drainage easement will sit outside that sewer easement. That sewer easement will be exclusive to the existing sewer rising main.
So in terms of any, I guess there were a couple of things. Firstly, in terms of any impacts on tree roots, is that already covered in a proposed condition of consent that would obviously need to be addressed either prior to CC or during
the CC process?
During
yes.
the CC process. So,
yep.
That's something that to be obviously to check the condition. And the other thing that was raised was that I think one of the applicants along there was concerned that, one of the members of the public was concerned that about the earthworks that were proposed on the new lots bounding his land, to the effect that the new ground level of the proposed new lots could be higher than the existing ground level and his ground level. And I just wondered if there were any privacy issues associated with that, or any impacts on changes to drainage flows relating to that.
My understanding is that the earthworks really only relate to the actual road construction themselves, and then there's batters back to natural ground. So with the subdivision construction, there was no altering or benching of the lots as such.
Okay. Okay, I had no further questions. So if nobody else has any other questions, any of the panel members have no further questions, then I will now formally, that brings us to a closure of this part of the meeting of the Central Coast Local Planning Panel. I'd really like to thank again everyone who attended today and took part, including my fellow panel members, members of the community, representatives of the applicants and council staff. So what the panel does now is the meeting is adjourned, and the panel will confer and reach a decision, and that decision will be placed up on council's website as soon as possible. And I think it's definitely within 7 days. So that brings this part of the meeting to a close. Again, thanks for attending, and I hope everyone stays safe.